At my last church, I met with a guy, and I said, "How are you doing?" And he said, "Okay." I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, my wife said to me this week, I'm tired of playing tennis on my friend's tennis courts. And what she meant by that was, I want you to earn more money so that we can live in a bigger house with a bigger garden so that we can have a tennis court so I don't have to play at my friend's." Oh, what are you going to do about that? What he did about it was this. He changed jobs to a job where he earned more money, had more pressure, and worked longer hours. And the things he did at church, well, he came off those rotas gradually, one by one, and then stopped attending church on Sundays because I'm so worn out by work that I need to recharge my batteries on a Sunday. "I'll meet you in London for lunch if you want," I said. "Every month, every 6 weeks, whatever works for you." And I brought along another guy who he got on with, and we would meet for lunch, and we would talk God stuff and life stuff, which are kind of the same thing, aren't they? And then after a while, he was too busy for lunch because of the pressures. I still think of, and I still pray for him and his wife, because they are created in the image of God and they are loved completely by God. And I do sometimes wonder if they got their tennis court and if they're happy with it. Where your treasure is, your heart will be also. They're words that Jesus used in Matthew 6, verses 19 to 21. We have two versions of that on the screen. Jesus said, "Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth where moths and vermin destroy." I can imagine the vermin looking up and, "What's wrong with us? We always pick on us." "And where thieves," yeah, we're not like thieves, come on, leave us out. "And where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Or in the Message version, which is a modern version so that we can understand the language of the Bible more easily. "Don't hoard treasure down here where it gets eaten by moths and corroded by rust, or worse, stolen by burglars. Stockpile treasure in heaven, where it's safe from moth and rust and burglars." It's obvious, isn't it? The place where your treasure is the place you will most want to be and end up being. The literal Greek for that part about "for where your treasure is and their heart will be also," right at the beginning there, "do not store up for yourselves." It's literally, stop storing treasure. Jesus didn't say, well, if you feel like it, or if the Spirit leads you, or if your friends do it. Jesus says, stop storing treasure for your own possessions and buildings and money. If you are storing treasure just for you, stop. Now, I'm not talking here, and I don't think Jesus was either, about putting food on the table for the family, because in the Lord's Prayer, he does say, "Give us today our daily bread." I'm not talking about going and buying a beautiful dress that is reasonably priced for a wedding that you're going to go to, gents. Go and do that. I'm not saying that we should live like some monastic community where we always look glum. I think, if I'm honest, the church has done that enough around the world for long enough that people who aren't yet Christians think that's what Christians are all like. My experience when people meet you who aren't yet Christians, they say, they're really nice. And they can be surprised. Let's keep spreading that message, shall we? That we enjoy the gift of life that God has given to us. But let's stop storing up treasure on earth. Buildings, possession, money, just for me. Jesus says, store up treasure, possessions, building, money, for others. And those others might be our literal next door neighbour. They might be somebody we meet at the school gate. They may be somebody that we work with. It may be one of the partners in our Beyond TN10 communities that we work with. It could be on your doorstep, it could be on the other side of the globe. Jesus says, store up treasures in heaven for them to make an eternal difference. Because where your treasure is, that's where your heart's going to be, where your energy, your time, your passion is going to be. If all of your treasure is stored up for you, all of your passion is going to be about you. I don't know about you, I've met lots of rich people who get ill and then think, so what was that all about then? I've got everything the world could offer treasure-wise, but my daughter won't speak to me because of the way I treated her when she was a teenager. And I'm not talking abuse here, I'm just talking busyness, and actually you are below me making lots of money. And then I've met other really rich people, cash-wise, and they get to the end and they're quite comfortable in a way of meeting God in heaven because I've stored up treasure in heaven. I think I've done the right thing. Where your energy, your passion is, your treasure, that's where your heart's going to be. We had a prophetic word from a chap in this church called Ben Spring at the end of last year. Ben is 28 years old. He's married to Melissa. He's an accountant. I'm told accountants are geography teachers without the personality. But I don't believe that at all. I think that's absolute rubbish. I've met some really interesting ones. And he shared a prophecy with us that we as TBC are going on a boat. We're a boat and we're going on a journey. And it's not that we've never done this before, we've done this all through the 150 years of our history together, numerous times, but God is getting us ready for a new boat. We must be, a new journey as a boat, we must be ready. And people came up to me after that and they said, I'm really excited about this. And then the second comment from some was this: where are we going? Where's the journey? And the response at that time was, we don't know. Because God is telling us to get ready at the moment. And we will get ready for that journey on that boat. As a leadership team, that's myself and Dave, two of your ministers, and the people that you voted for who are on the wall out there. They're not literally on the wall out there. We don't hang them there and then get them off for Sundays and dust them down ready, but their pictures are there. 8 people that you and I and Dave voted for. We met with Andy Matheson, who is a member of this church, who lives in India. He works with Oasis India. His gifting is leadership. And he gave us a day of his time to say, okay, you as a church have a vision and values, lives being transformed, everyone welcome, everyone involved, everyone celebrating. So where are you going? And we spent the day with him as a leadership team, and we came up with 5 aims of where we felt we should be going as a church family. And then Dave and I shared those with our weekly management team. That is people like Sally Allen and John Knight and other people on the staff who work to keep this place running as paid employees. And we spent time saying, what do you think about this? Is this where God could be leading us? And they said yes. And so we want to share it with you as a church family today. This is the beginning of a conversation with you. This is how it is, can you rubber stamp it? This is what we think, can you talk with us? There can be 2 extremes of leadership in the church. There can be a dictator who says, this is how it is, thus saith the Lord, get on with it. And there can be the way that some churches do it in leadership, where the leader says, I'll just find out where they're going and get in front of them. And then it looks like I'm leading, but actually I'm just going with where everyone wants. I think there's a middle way, and that way is, we feel God is saying this, can we discuss it together? And that's been my model for 20 years, and it will be my model until I retire or die, or maybe die on my retirement day. I don't know. That we sense God is saying things, and then we want to explore it together. So you will get a document with these 5 aims in, and then we will ask you, what do you think of them? What do you think of these ideas? Have you got any ways that we could implement these ideas? How do you think we could slightly craft them and change them? Because we're a family, we're in it together. And so the first of these aims is this, that and this is by 2020, so it's in about 2 years' time, 25% of people in TN10 understand the positive impact of TBC within the community. TN10 has 16,000 people in it. Sometimes we can think, TN10, oh, that's that group of houses up there. No, it's huge. It includes the Ridgeway with long drives and high hedgerows, but just the same problems as houses that are just a stone's throw away from us. That's TN10. We want 25% of people to understand the positive impact we have on the community. Because so many people, when you talk about TBC, they either say, don't know where that is. Or, oh, is that ugly building? Do you know, we were voted number 2 ugliest building a few years ago, just after the train station in Tonbridge. Woo! But we're beautiful on the inside. People who aren't yet Christians, they generally, not always, but generally come to TBC to drop 308 children off at the different children and youth clubs we do every week. Or because they have a need. I need food. I need some advice to get out of debt. I've got things going on in my mind and I need some counselling. We have 3 different groups of counsellors in our church that take time to talk with people and help them and guide them. I'm coming here because I've got nowhere else to go. And so for many people, if they're not yet Christians, the reasons they come in through those doors Monday through Sunday are not reasons that fill them with belief. They come in with guilt and with shame. And thank God many of them leave transformed. But wouldn't it be great, wouldn't it, if we had somewhere in our building where people could come just because they're human, just because they're made in the image of God? Wouldn't it maybe be great if that area over there was a double-roomed cafe, right on the corner? Because if you live at this end of the town, there isn't a public toilet, not one. If you live at the end of this town, there is not a cafe, not one. You can go to the 6-in-1 club if you want to. That is the centre for darts in West Kent. That's what they sell, and they do it really well. Or you can go to Tonbridge Angels Football Club on a Saturday afternoon or a Tuesday evening for a beer. Don't. It's not romantic, it's not conducive, it's football fans, they're lovely, but they're like me. There's nowhere. You have to wait for a bus out here and go into town to meet your friends for a coffee. How about if we had a place? I'm dreaming. But somewhere where people could come in to meet someone for business. Where people could come in. Because you know open house that we do on a Wednesday and a Friday in here every week? That's outgrown there. It's too constricting. Because people are flooding in every week. And how about if this became known as a place where positive impacts happen? There's so much that you do by the grace of God and in the power of the Holy Spirit that people in TN10 have not got a Danny LaRue about. They haven't got a clue about it. Because it is a massive step to walk through those doors. I remember 2 years ago at Christmas, a lady was standing here. She'd been in a meeting, and we had our huge Christmas tree up there, and she looked in. And I said, "Do you want to go in?" And she went, "Oh no, I'll turn to dust." I said, "Who do you support?" She said, "Liverpool." I said, "That's okay. God likes Scousers." And I literally brought her in, this woman in her 40s, so she could look at the Christmas tree. That entrance, although it slides open easily for us, it clunks open for those who think that church is a place where they are loathed and hated and looked at like vermin. So one of our aims is that 4,000 people in TN10 will say, "Oh, TBC, that's brilliant." There's a Facebook page for TBC mums. And one mum wrote on it and she said, "Anywhere I could take my mum so that she could be looked after. She's getting older and frailer." And every other comment from people who weren't in TBC was, "I'll go to the day centre at TBC, it's brilliant. Go to the luncheon club at TBC, it's brilliant." This isn't us promoting, it's others. Wouldn't it be great if more and more people were saying, "Oh, I know they take up the parking on a Sunday, but they do it generally really well. But there's so much more that goes on there as well. And you know what? They're just ordinary, broken, busted people like us. They're not pious and pompous. They're like Mike Sanderson." One lady said to me about Mike Sanderson, she said, "I've come to your church and no one talks to me apart from the old man at the door." Ouch! But before the laugh, hear the first bit. No one talks to me. But she said, I'm going to make an effort now. Next time I'm going to talk to other people as well. I think she's spoken to Mike so much that she said, I've got to broaden my horizons. We love you. You're brilliant. The second aim for 2020 that we've been thinking and praying about is that 5% of people in TN10 have the opportunity to follow Jesus. That's 800 people. And you may say, no, we should go for 100%. Why set ourselves up for failure when we could say, actually, 800 people is massive. It's almost twice our church membership. And we want to give 800 people over the next 2 years an opportunity to follow Jesus. Through Faith Look Course, through Alpha, through the Sunday Fun Day, through recovery, through working with the other groups that we have, through equipping us so that we can gossip the gospel wherever it is that we live and move and have our being, as Paul said in one of his epistles. 800 people. That will make this place messy. Bless you. Because not everyone knows how you should behave as a Christian. They haven't been trained in the ways of Baptist. But we're up for that, aren't we? We're cool with that. Because I don't know about you, I don't want people to become like me. I want them to become like Jesus. And there are glimpses of Jesus in me, but there's also some stodgy stuff and some sin. And so I want them to come as they are and be transformed so that they are like Jesus. The third aim that we have is that more people are celebrated in their front lines and their roles in their community. That we hear more of the stories of what's going on in our lives in our church services. A lady came up to me a few weeks ago, and I've been praying with her over the last 2 months over a big decision in her life. And we were singing the first hymn, and she came up to me and said, sorry, I'm late getting in because there were roadworks. She said, but I need to tell you that God has answered my situation miraculously this week. And I said, brilliant. And as we carried on singing, I thought, I'd love to be able to share this in the service, but we haven't got time. And so the way we do our services might have to change a little so that we can hear more of the stories of what people are doing. The sermons might have to be slightly shorter. Who said amen? We might sing less so that we have more of what God is doing. Because God isn't just active on a Sunday in this place. God is active when you're at business in London. God is active when you are teaching year 5s at school. God is active when you are caring for your mother and she doesn't even know who you are anymore. God is active in all of those ways, and we want to celebrate them. Somebody who works with our recovery course, where they're having 50 people coming every week. Do you know there were 140 people in here from 60 different churches yesterday hearing about the recovery course because they want to do it in their churches. It was Skyped to America, to Canada and Australia. Imagine 60 other churches doing what by God's grace we're able to do through this building. And one of the ladies that helps me said to me, just last week, when we had someone come to share how God had changed their life, the lady sitting next to her, or the gent, I can't remember which, nudged her and said, I like this bit, this is the testimony time. Because stories encourage us. Myself and Jackie Potter, one of your leaders, you'll see her picture out there, we've been running a discipleship course for 6 months this year, and we're going to run another one for 6 months next year. And in that we look at the scriptures, we look at well-known Christian figures, and we all share our life story, and then we talk to that person about their life story and we pray with them. And when we asked for feedback, there were loads of positives. But the main positive was we loved the life stories. We loved hearing how God had worked through different people. I thought, how about everything I did? All the papers I wrote, the font I chose, the colours, and you are excited about what God is doing just in ordinary people's lives. The best feedback I've got on any sermon since I've been here for 3 years was when I shared my life story a few weeks ago. The emails from you, the comments, the firm grabbing of the arm by frail old ladies as they crush the bones to dust, and tears fall in their eyes as people said, thank you for being vulnerable and honest. And I want to continue to be a part of a church that's like that, don't you? where we go deep into the truths of Scripture, but we're honest about who we are as well. Because when I hear stories of what God has done in your life, it reminds me of things that God has done in my life, and it challenges me that God might do those things again. So that we're not just a dry, dusty church, which we are not, by the way. I'm so pleased to be a part of this place. But when we hear each other's stories, it encourages us. So early next year, you're going to hear Dave Hitchcock's life story in one of the Sundays. And then later in that year, you're going to hear John Knight's life story. He's our pastoral minister. And then at the beginning of 2020, you're going to hear Sally Allen, our outreach minister's life story. And then I hope it will go out to people in the church who aren't ministers. And that some of you say, hey, could I share mine one Sunday? So that we are encouraged by what God is doing. Our fourth aim for 2020 that we're putting before you for discussion is that within 2 months of Gift Day 2019, the allocated funds for all the home groups have been used for community enhancing activities. We've done this the last few years where we've said to the 30 home groups, here's a bunch of cash, go and bless other people with it. And some of you have said, we don't know anyone to do that with. And some have said, we're worried that we might not do it quite right. And others of you have used that money. One home group said, you didn't give us enough, so we've clubbed together, we've got the same amount again, and we've used that to bless that person again. And when are we getting more money? That's brilliant. Because those stories spread. I heard of a school where somebody at the gate, they said, you go to that church. They're the church that helped my friend through one of their small groups. Wow. Within 2 months, we want it turned around so that as home groups, it's in our DNA that we pastorally care for each other, that we study the Scriptures together, but that we're also outward looking. And that may be in our local neighbourhood, or it might be in beyond TN10 as we bless those around us in the world. And our fifth aim is this, that a certain percentage of TBC family are generous with their time in serving and blessing, resulting in enough volunteers to fulfil the needs of our community enhancing activities. Why the question mark, Neil? Because we've just worked out how many are involved already, and I need to sit down with the weekly management team and say, what do you think we can encourage and challenge one another to move it to? Because most weeks, Dave Hitchcock will get emails or letters from people saying, we need more help. We need help with the rota for day centre pickup. We need help to drive Tonbridge Angels Academy team to an away game at Ashford. We need help in brigades to control wild children, who actually are lovely if you're thinking of being involved there. And so we want to encourage more and more to be involved. The challenge of a larger church is that we can come on a Sunday and then leave and that's it. Now, for some of us, that's absolutely understandable because maybe our job is all-consuming. Maybe we've got someone we're caring for at home and that takes up a lot of our time. So if you're in that position, don't sit here, please, and feel guilty. Except that at this point in your life, you're giving all you can in your whole life and you can't give as much to TBC. But the challenge is there, my friends. That's why we have more paid employees now than we have in history. Because in the old days, often, usually the mum would not work full-time. My mum didn't work full-time. She cleaned at Tonbridge School, worked in a fish and chip shop and did other stuff. And my dad did 2 jobs at one stage to get the money to come in. Now, in my experience, if you're in a married couple, both people work. So with Little Stars, our group for children, we haven't got a young mum in there that's going to lead that group through until the day she drops dead. Because when they have a baby, usually within 6-9 months or a year, they're back at work. Because generally they need to be. And at the other end, those lovely grandparents, what are so many of you doing now? You're looking after your grandchildren. So the days off, I've retired, shall I take up watercolour painting and polo? I don't know why I chose polo there. Maybe that's a word for someone here who's just coming up to retirement. Now it's, could you pick the children up on Thursday and Friday from school. Our little one is not quite ready yet to go to preschool. Could you look after them 2 days a week? And so many of you are giving that time. Or my grandchild is unwell, so I've got to go and look after them at the other end of the country for a week. So the pressure is there. And on top of that, we have something like 30% less leisure time as workers in this country than we did a few decades ago. So people are being expected to work longer and harder than they were. Not in every sector, I get that, but in so many. And so the number of volunteers, it's more challenging. I want to thank you. If you prepare these flowers, if you come in and cut this bread, and I mean that is a hard job, isn't it, to pour 300-400 of those? That deserves an extra jewel in your crown when you go to heaven. If you come in and help with our young people, if you come in and you do the sound and the visuals and you get in here about 9 o'clock in the morning, you come in and you practice the music and you choose the songs beforehand and you pray afterwards. If you, whatever it is you do, God bless you and thank you. Because if it was just Dave and I, there'd be no music, there'd just be loads of waffle. And no one wants that. Thank you for the time that you give in this place. So we're not sure what that percentage should be. At the moment, 259 members out of our 500 volunteer in at least one thing. There are 3 of you that volunteer in at least 7 things. We'd love you to drop down to 6 or 5 if you're doing too much, as other people volunteer in a few. The encouraging thing is that we have 353 adults, that's including people that aren't members, and 50 under 18s who help in this church week after week after week. So we'll look at that percentage and come back to you. Maybe you have an opinion on it and you can email me and share with me what you think that should be. And friends, to fulfill these aims, it's going to take time and energy. It's also going to take money. And our giving, as I said a couple of weeks ago, has plateaued over the last 5 years. We've had some encouragements. A guy who's not yet a Christian yet, who knew what we were doing and walked in the door and said, here's 750 quid, I like what this church is doing. Brilliant. Had a lady come up to me, she said, money's really tight for us as a family, but we sat down and we've decided we're going to start giving £50 a month to TBC. Fantastic. Another family who said, we're going to up our giving by £10 a month. That's £120 extra a year that we'll be able to use for kingdom activity in this place. We had someone, I don't know who they are, and they came in and they said, here's £20,000. One of you. I don't want to know who you are, but I kind of would like to get on your Christmas list. But you see, I'm not bothered, and I really mean this, whether it's £20,000 one-off gift or £10 extra a month, because it's about giving what we can. Some people are really strict on tithing, 10%. It's there in the Old Testament. Tithing is only mentioned 4 times in the New Testament, and it's never a commandment to Christians to do it. It's a good guide, it's helpful, but please remember what I said from my friend Graham at my last church a couple of weeks ago, and none of you have asked for his email address yet. He was a rich guy, and he said, Neil, please, when you preach on giving, don't punish those who are cash struggling at the expense of those who have a lot of money. He said, because 10% for somebody who has £100 a week is a lot of money. Whereas 10% for someone like me who's almost a millionaire, it doesn't touch the sides. He said, we need to be a family where those who are struggling are relieved of that guilt by those who have a lot of money and will give on their behalf. So I encourage you to give sacrificially, but not so that you have to go and see someone in debt advice. And those of us that have a lot, whether it's in property or cash or whatever, where am I storing up treasure? Or on earth or in heaven? We had a prophecy from Ben Spring again. It was in February of this year. And when we heard it, it didn't really make much sense to us as in being relevant, but in these last few weeks we've dug it out again as a leadership team, and it says this: there are some people at church who have been saving up for a rainy day but when that rainy day comes, it might not be theirs. I took that to mean there might be some folk at TBC who have saved well over the years, done well financially, put money aside for when something goes wrong. But for them, that rainy day hasn't come in a long time, isn't coming. But there are others in and around the church who are in the proverbial downpour day in, day out. I think God might be challenging them and all of us in some part to really trust him with our money. Can these people trust God with all areas of their life, especially their money? Maybe there will be, already are, and have been opportunities for them to bless others in a time of need and in turn be blessed themselves when they follow God's lead on the finances in their life. And as we shared that as a leadership team in our prayer meeting, we said, yeah, maybe there are some folk that fits with. And then I had a moment, I think, from God. Do you ever get those where you think that's far too intelligent to be me? And I said, maybe this is a challenge to us as a leadership team as well. Are we as a leadership team, in the way we budget and save our money, saving up for a rainy day that may never come? Because you see, we have to, for charity law, have £110,000 in the bank. We have to. But we've got another 40 grand that we've been hanging on to, that we used to call the flat roof fund. You know, the flat roof along the back there that's going to fall in any minute for the last 20 years. So we keep some money for that for when it falls in. And we felt challenged by God, actually, should we be living by faith as a leadership team? As the trustees have challenged us to in this church. And should we say, actually, we're going to spend that 40 grand or as much of it as we can in seeing lives being transformed? And so when you come to the special church meeting this evening, if you're able to, and you hear the budget, that's where the budget is going to be leading us. Because we want to be a church where we're not just comfy, where we are led by faith. I asked Ali Bacon, our financial lady, to break up the way we spend our money. So for August, up until August this year, we have spent £369,000, £642. And I said to her, can you take the wages for staff and pretend that half of it is spent on things we do outward looking and half is spent on us? And if you do that, we have spent 74% of what we've spent on people who aren't yet Christians. Beyond TN10, brigades, schools work, day centre, everything. I think that's amazing, don't you? I think that's amazing when I hear of some churches that hoard cash that aren't very far away from us, and I'm not judging them. Well, I'm annoyed because they could use that in so many ways. And you are giving money away, so that we can see lives being transformed. That's where our treasure is, folks. That's where we're putting, as a family, our buildings, our possessions and our money. 3/4 of it into people that may not darken these doors on a Sunday. I think that's where God's heart is. With those who don't yet know him, because God longs for every single person to come to a place where they do know him. You and me and everyone else since the day we were born were God's treasure. We were in God's heart. And so he spent his son Jesus on us so that we could come to know him. Friends, let's spend our time, our energy, our buildings, our possessions, our money on seeing lives being transformed by Jesus. Amen.